I'm John David Birdall,
And I'm Zach Coleman.
and this is Comic Space, the only place in the whole galaxy where you can tune in, where you can geek out, and where you can learn something new about comics every week.
You left your dreams behind, lost in the stars tonight. I'll be your scarlet speedster, anything you want, I'll be here. I'll be your scarlet speedster, anything you want, I'll be here.
And I am in control. I am in charge. Well, I don't know about being totally in charge, but I guess I'm sort of leading this conversation about some of the best DC Comics stories or storylines that there have been. Right, Zach?
Yes. So, I mean, if you're the mastermind behind this, does that make me your pinky?
Oh my gosh, so I'm Brain?
Yeah. Why would I do that, right?
Pinky, are you pondering what I'm pondering?
I think so, Brain. But then my name would be Thummy.
In a perfect world, your name would be Dummy.
I guess I could try and stick ears out or something. And
No, you've got to embody your own Orson Welles.
oh,
That's what the brain was modeled after.
okay.
So you got to embody your own inner villain.
I guess I can try. There's not a
That's going to be a hard
people
reach for
in
you.
me.
It's definitely going to be a hard reach. I can't see you being a villain.
I don't, people like it's not like I try and be bad, but it's like if I'm supposed to be villainous or something like that, even if I curse, people ask me to stop.
It's like this massive worldwide intake of air if John Birdall actually happens to curse.
Exactly. So I don't do that. But on to DC Comics. Okay. And so to keep the conversation, I don't know about short, I'm making sort of like compact or, not totally brief, but at least to keep us kind of on focus or something, or myself.
Yeah.
Right. To keep myself focused, I did just look up best DC Comics storylines. And I found a website, and I'll talk about the ones that I've read, of course. I'm not just going to go off of a list that someone else made totally, but it's like, where can I start with what people like fans, like a whole bunch of fans have decided, what are the best DC Comics stories or storylines out there or that have been published. And so I found, GamesRadar.com. And there's best DC Comics stories of all time. You voted on the best DC Comics stories of all time, and these are your results.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, exactly. And so I will start at number 10 because I have read that one, and let's just get started. Okay. Yeah. And so number 10 is Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. Okay.
I don't know.
Have you read that one, Zach?
No, I have not.
Okay. And so that was one where Superman's like Crisis on Infinite Earths was just about to happen. Okay, and we'll be talking about that one, of course. That story or storyline. But Superman was going to be coming to an end. I guess the series Superman was going to be coming to an end just before Crisis on Infinite Earths. And so the description here, a little bit of a description is, how do you eulogize the history of a character in 2 short issues? That's the question Julian Schwartz sought to answer. And he hired Alan Moore to do it. And he did with Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. And so that's a story where Superman hangs up his cape, is done, before he died, before Doomsday killed him.
Okay.
Way back. It's like, he died, he disappeared, he was just gone. Okay, in these 2 issues. And so that's where the title, I guess, comes in. Whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow? What happened to him? He's just gone. And so it's framed, or it's sort of structured as a reporter interviewing Lois Lane, asking her kind of what happened to Superman. Where did he go? And I do believe it was done really, really well. It's so totally fast. It moves so quickly, but well. And Alan Moore, does put on display his genius and his brilliance, in there. And so, do you have any questions about it, Zach? Like what I had read in there? And
I was
I'm not
kind
going
of
to spoil it. I'm not going to spoil what happened to the Man of Tomorrow. Okay, I'm not going to do that right now. So you can read it.
I was, you bringing up Alan Moore and his work on Superman just automatically flashes to the one storyline that he did with Superman in regards to Mongol and the black. Was it the black?
Oh gosh, it's for
plan.
the man who has everything, right? Isn't that the title of it?
Yes, it was that storyline. And you just mentioning Alan Moore made me think of that one. And it was, I believe, brought up in the Justice League series, the cartoon.
Yes.
The Man of Tomorrow, or Man Who Has Everything.
Yeah. Everything.
The only difference is being like in the comic book, it was Batman, Robin, and Wonder Woman, where it was just Wonder Woman and Batman in the animated series. But yeah.
Was it the Black Mercy?
Black Mercy, that was it. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
the Black Mercy. And, just playing on that what if sort of scenario, that like paradise, dream, fantasy, and torturing something with it, which I thought was a really cool idea. I'm not entirely a big fan of Moore's work. I mean, he has some great concepts, but executions can kind of get,
sure.
Yeah. But no, those that was one of the few stories where I was like, okay, this is Welly. It was Welly well. It was executed well, and it was a good idea, a good concept. So if it's anything along those lines, yeah, I'd definitely check it out because I'm kind of curious. And you brought up Doomsday and that whole story arc too, with the death of Superman, a world without Superman, and then like the return of Superman, which is also another great storyline. It's just having to go through this fight with this creature that he couldn't really stop, and that officially killed Superman.
Yeah.
And then kind of get into like a world without Superman, dealing with his death from a world perspective, from the city metropolis perspective, and even from a personal one, what Lois is going through. Because at this point they're married, and then having to deal with a family who lost their son, and then the he's alive again, and the bringing of new characters into it. We often joke about in previous episodes how with DC it's kind of comes full circle, and and nothing really changes, where this is one of those times where things did change. It brought on new characters, new villains, and a new perspective somewhat. We had like Steel, Superboy, the Eradicator, and then the villain like Hank Henshaw. And talk about changes. What happens with Green Lantern?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, and I ought to say, before you get into it, was Julius Schwartz, not Julian. When I had mentioned, Julius Schwartz, who was editing Superman. So yeah, but Green Lantern.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the ones we're gonna pick on because that's one of my choices. But we'll save that for later.
Sure. Okay.
What happened there with the destruction of Coast City? Pretty much losing it. Definitely brought in big ramifications throughout the entire DC universe. So that's definitely one in my list.
Sure.
But going back to yours, we had that one by Alan Moore. So what was number 9?
Yeah, and I had read that one, and so that one ought to be read. I do believe. It's just because there's a lot of reverence in there. Like Alan Moore shows Superman, or is really a lot of deference in there, a lot of respect is shown to Superman. Because I've read some stories where he's writing for the character Superman, especially in like Swamp Thing, and it's just silly. He doesn't really. It's not that he doesn't care about the character, but he's secondary to what's going on, and so it just comes off as kind of silly.
Yeah.
So number 9, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's The Return of Barry Allen, and I've actually read a little bit of that one too. Let me scroll.
Is this like the Flash Rebirth?
So no, that's not the Flash Rebirth. It's actually one of the first comics that I had read. So I'll read a bit of the description. Okay, so in the wake of Crisis on Infinite Earths, Wally West became the new Flash. Yay!
Yay!
Graduating from sidekick to superhero, the first time that had ever happened too.
Yeah.
With the death of his mentor, Barry Allen. Wally's transition wasn't without growing pains, however. He failed to gel with readers until Mark Waid began his landmark run on Flash, giving Wally the depth that his predecessor often lacked. And so basically, Wally, in this story, the Return of Barry Allen. So Wally is the Flash, and all of a sudden Barry Allen returns, of course, because it's called The Return of Barry Allen.
Yeah.
But there's a twist. And so, am I supposed to tell you what the twist is, or what I had read?
Please, yeah.
Okay, it's Eobard Thawne. And it was the Reverse Flash.
Ooh, and that's in regards to Eobard Thawne and the return or the Reverse Flash. That's really interesting, compelling story, at least character-wise, and how you've described him to me. So delve into that a little bit for our listeners.
Oh, sure. The guy is a nut. He's a nut.
Is that a clinical term?
Yes, you can find that in the DSM-5. He's a nut bar. Okay, and gosh, he idolized the Flash, and what you would find out in this story, okay, The Return of Barry Allen, is that he idolized him so much he became him in this story. And then he loses his mind. He's disturbed, he's unhinged, and that's how Wally picks up on this is not Barry Allen.
Yeah.
The
obsessive stalker type who's someone who's so obsessed with this character that it takes like dangerous levels. And that was one very interesting thing that I had never seen in comics. Someone who wanted to be a superhero so much, be their idol to dangerous proportions. And it hadn't been something I'd seen in comics when you brought it up. And it's one of the things that actually compelled me to start watching The Flash, at least in the series, because that first season of The Flash was very much the Reverse Flash heavy. That was the main bad guy. And the way they did it was very compelling, very intimidating, very interesting, in which led me to start reading more of Flash and actually become a fan of him. Reading, like I said, Rebirth, even Flashpoint, because that one's heavy too, and that's also on my list. So I'm gonna have to read that one as well. Yeah,
do that. And as far as I know, like it's Eobard Thawne at the beginning of his career as the Reverse Flash. Like he shows up thinking he's the Flash, and because of what happens between him and Wally, that's how he becomes the Reverse Flash.
Okay.
Like that's the aftermath of it. Like he can't handle not being Barry Allen, so he goes back and starts tormenting Barry Allen or something like that. At least that's what I recall.
Yeah.
Like reading some of it.
So it's kind of like his origin story.
I suppose so. At least that's what I had read then. So.
And then you said it was Mark Waid?
Oh yeah, Mark Waid.
Oh, good.
Yes. And so his name's going to come up again.
Oh, definitely. I mean, not just in DC, but in all of comics. I mean, I remember his run in Daredevil, which was really good. And if I remember correctly, he was the one like has done other independent stuff as well as some stuff for Marvel, like Civil War. I think he was responsible for that one as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's just throwing the name out there. If you like this, He's done other things recently that's come to mind is like Jupiter's End
Okay.
and Jupiter Circle. They just did like the Netflix series. Definitely check out one of the greatest writers that we have.
Yeah.
So you're bound to have fun.
Okay, so number 8
Yes.
on this list. And we can go one by one, or at least I can just mention a couple of them, so we can get to your list soon. Because some of them I haven't read. So the Judas Contract is number 8 with Teen Titans. The new Teen Titans, and it's the Judas Contract.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one in regards to just the cliff notes. It really showed Deathstroke as a despicable human being and really did a number on the Titans, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So I'll just read a little bit of what it says right here. The Judas Contract also focuses on the story of Dick Grayson versus Deathstroke as the two warriors maneuver their allies to counter the other's forces, culminating in the one-time Robin's transition to his new superheroic persona as Nightwing.
Yes. And I believe the second season of the Titans series delved heavily in that because he was trying to find his identity and trying to separate from Batman in the regards of the first season. And then he's trying to decide who he's trying to be in the second season. And Deathstroke, while tormenting the rest of the Titans, goes to him and says, you're pretty much not complete. Which gets him to don as you said, the Nightwing persona.
Sure.
That one was another Hallmark story.
Mm.
So yeah, that was a good choice. I agree with that.
Number 7, ready for it?
Yes.
Okay.
Number 7.
And that is the Sinestro Corps War.
Uh-oh. Now we're getting into my territory. Oh, that's one of my favorite.
I haven't read it.
You haven't read it?
I don't know that much about it. So if you do, go right ahead.
Oh man, this is sort of well, I don't want to say it's the beginning, but near the start of this whole line that Jeff Johns did.
Okay.
With Green Lantern. He'd finished his work on The Flash, having brought back Barry Allen, the actual Barry Allen.
Okay.
Stepping away and then actually having to come back to fix some of the stuff the previous writer had messed up.
Okay.
And then he turned his eye towards Green Lantern, bringing back Hal Jordan from his craziness.
Fall, right? His fall.
Going back to what I said, the results of Doomsday and Coast City being destroyed because of Mongol, he kind of has a mental break, and goes around, starts killing the Green Lanterns, and then ends up dying himself. In the Green Lantern Corps, or the Guardians, end up getting so desperate that they end up using Sinestro to go after Hal, which he kills, and then ends up becoming Parallax. What happens here is, with that first Green Lantern Rebirth, it brings back Green Lantern and starts planting these seeds that end up becoming the Sinestro War. Of course, Sinestro is alive and well. It was all an illusion, of course.
Oh.
Yeah. It wasn't really him. It was the Guardians. It was Parallax, who was using his image to try and stop him or play on his fears. And what's revealed is that Parallax is actually this entity, this embodiment of fear.
Yeah.
And Sinestro's tapped into that, learning that this entity was actually imprisoned in the central battery of Oa. And it had reached out to Hal Jordan at his weakest, most fearful moment, which was the destruction of Coast City. And it infected him like a parasite and feed off his fear. And this whole Sinestro War is basically Sinestro using the yellow power of fear to make his own core, and waging war against the universe, the known universe, and especially the Green Lantern Corps, because in Sinestro's mind, he believes that fear is the only way to order. You get order, respect through fear. So it's him imposing that ideal on everyone else. At this point, Hal Jordan's back in the Green Lanterns. We have Kal Rayner, who was
Ion. Yeah.
Ion, who we later find out is the embodiment of Will.
Oh, okay.
And he's captured, and that entity is ripped out from him, and he becomes the new Parallax.
Oh no!
On his weakest moment, they basically do the same thing to him as they did to Hal Jordan.
Okay.
They reveal that his mother died because of a Yellow Lantern virus that infected and killed her, and start playing on his fears and stuff like that. So at that weak point, Parallax latches onto him as a host.
Okay.
So we have this, and he ends up making his Sinestro ends up making his own core with his own sort of light bearers. We have Hank Henshaw, also a remnant from the Doomsday storyline, who's the cyborg Superman, who enslaves the Manhunters.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and brings them into his thrall.
Yeah, we were the first peacekeepers, right? Before Green Lanterns?
We have Superboy Prime.
Okay.
Who's another crazy. He's uber powerful and uber crazy.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. And then we have Sinestro and other figures that end up becoming prominent throughout the rest of not only this series, but the rest of the Green Lantern series.
Okay.
And we also get our first look at the Anti-Monitor being like the guardian embodiment of the Sinestro Corps.
Okay.
It continues this long run in Jeff Johns' Green Lantern history, which really leads into a really great story. And it's amazing. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it.
Okay. Here, I'll read a bit. It's just the last sort of, gosh, what is it, paragraph or something like that. So, culminating with some huge battles and personal redemptions, Sinestro Corps War also led to a greater expansion of the Green Lantern universe as a whole, hinting at the rise of 5 more corps based on the colors of the emotional spectrum. This explosion of creativity and action has not only solidified this as one of the greatest Green Lantern stories, but one of the greatest DC stories in history.
Yes, yes. And going back to that theme of changes that reverberate throughout the universe, this is one of them. And from a storyteller's perspective, it's really a no-brainer. I've known actual writers who are kicking themselves in the butt for not thinking about this, because it's just a simple concept. It really is. And sometimes simple works.
Uh-huh.
Jeff Johns answers the question, what do the other colors do? What do the other colors in the emotional spectrum represent? Mm-hmm. And he answers this. And it starts with the Sinestro Corps, the one that we know about, which is yellow. And it reverberates throughout the others. We start exploring the other emotional spectrum, the powers of the emotional spectrum.
So number 6, The Dark Knight Returns.
Wait, that sounds familiar.
Yes, and so for those who don't know, I can read just a little bit about that. 30 plus years after its original 4-part release, Frank Miller and is it Klaus Janson and Lynn Varley's The Dark Knight Returns is undeniably one of the most powerful Batman stories ever told, and it is. It is.
I think from this point, he was his run here was a major inspiration for the '89 Batman movie with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson, and giving that darker tone to Batman. Whereas before, it kind of gone back to its own seriousness, but before that, it was again going back to the campy Batman in the '60s. Yeah. And, Bam and Zop and Pow. And it kind of influenced comics.
Bat time, same Bat channel.
Yes, yes. And it kind of reflected that in the comics as well. Yeah. Until it started, it was the artist Adams, I believe it was, who started turning Batman back into that gritty character. Neil Adams, yes. And doing like more serious stories. I think around his run is when they did like the second Robin dying.
Oh yeah.
Jason Todd
Death in the Family.
Yeah. But when Miller came in and just turned it into that gritty old man Batman, he really hasn't done much to save the city or stop crime in Gotham.
Yeah.
And he comes out of retirement for multiple reasons and figuring out that his work is not yet done.
Sure.
And again, it reverberates throughout all of DC. We had the Michael Keaton Batman, even in the Batman series with like Batman Beyond, you can see elements into that.
Oh, okay.
It's really redefined the character as he should be. It's sort of this grisly, dark character who's supposed to be intimidating, who's supposed to be frightening. That's definitely one. I agree with that one. I think actually it might be a little bit. It should be a little bit higher.
I was about to say that number 6. I don't know.
Yeah, it depends on what the rest of them are, but
yeah. And so I'll just read just a little. It's got. So Miller's Bruce Wayne is a silver-haired cowboy dropped into the 80s or into an 80s dystopia, a burly bag of aching bones who finds himself physically outmatched by a new generation of vicious gangs and the return of his arch nemesis, the Joker. Finally, as nuclear war breaks out between the USA and the Soviet Union, it's up to Superman to take down a Batman hell-bent on cleaning up Gotham's streets.
It started this rivalry between Batman and Superman. I remember that in the comics as well. This sort of opposing sides in ideals and beliefs, whereas Batman believes that order must be kept and chaos is the norm, whereas Superman believes order is the norm and people just get a little bit chaotic and need to be brought back in.
Yeah.
And sort of that dichotomy or that difference between the two characters and that friction, which led to one of the greatest fights in comics, Batman versus Superman. And who wins? Of course, Batman.
Of course.
Of course. And speaking of influences again, that Batman versus Superman movie, you know, as poorly
Dawn of
written.
Justice, right?
Yeah. As poorly written as it was, delves heavily. Well, I mean, it is. It has that iconic fight between Batman and Superman.
Sure.
It shows you how influential Frank Miller has been. And he's also another one that has spanned not just Marvel and DC, but other independent works. I mean, Sin City is a dark noir story that he's done. His work on Daredevil was amazing. I mean, talk about gritty. You can't get any grittier than his run with Daredevil and bringing in characters like Elektra and Bullseye. That. So,
and Stick, did he create Stick or?
Yeah, he created Stick too, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, that whole run, you know, the Hidden Mentor and the Hand, I believe as well, or at least fleshed him out more and dealt with the origins of Daredevil. His growth, the black costume that we've seen in the series. So yeah, another writer that if you liked here with Batman, check out his other work if you don't know it already. I mean, come on, it's Frank Miller.
So okay, and so we're at number 5 now, and so for 5 and 4 and 3, I'm not going to like skip them, but I'm just going to mention I'm just going to mention them. Okay. So we can get to 2 and 1. And so we can get to your list.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, 5 is The New Frontier. Darwin
Oh,
Cook.
yes.
Yep. Great one. Great one.
Yeah. Love the artwork.
Yeah. And it's so stylized. I imagine it may turn some people off because of how, or turn some people away because of how stylized it is, you know, or with his style. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, you know, sometimes he's just got this kind of style where it's like, I just, it looks like, well, wasn't he one of the storyboard artists on Batman the Animated Series?
I don't recall.
Okay. So it's kind of got that look to it.
Yeah.
And so I know some people have talked about, you know, it's just kind of like, oh, if it was, I mean, it's supposed to be so full of hope and optimism and, you know, the story, but it's so, I say, stylized and sort of simplified. You
Yeah.
know, that
Yeah.
it's sometimes, doesn't really impress people as much. Okay, number 4,
Number 4.
All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, I haven't read that one myself. I've seen like clips of it,
Yeah,
the animated.
they did that one as an animated movie. I do remember reading it and not really being that impressed. I'm not a big Grant Morrison fan. And if I remember the synopsis right, it was Superman was dying of something.
Yeah, he was dying again.
Oh, he's just dying again. That's no big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so he has so much time to kind of put everything in order, or get
Yeah.
all his ducks in a row, and and then say goodbye.
Yeah.
And so yeah, although now I'm thinking of Doctor Who. I'm thinking of David Tennant when like the doctor was saying goodbye. I do believe that was handled really well.
That was.
To have that sort of drawn out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, number 3, The Great Darkness Saga.
Huh. I'm not familiar with that.
I have no idea what that. I mean, it's got Darkseid's face right on the cover, and so I'll just read. Oh, so the Great Darkness Saga tells the tale of Darkseid, Dark Lord of Apocalypse, making his way into the 31st century. The story brought together numerous villains of the Legion of Superheroes, uniting them with aspects of the 20th century DC universe. It defined the era of the Legion and set the stage for what came for years after. And so Legion of Superheroes, right? Don't they have the rings? They're in the future.
The Legionnaires.
Yeah.
That's another one that I'm not too familiar with. I started reading it again with when Brian Michael Bendis was brought over to DC and started writing them. And with me, the Legionnaires, it was I couldn't get past the names. You're like Bouncing Boy and Chameleon Boy and Elemental Lad and Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl and Cosmic Boy, and I'm
Brainiac 5, wasn't he in there?
Brainiac 5, yeah, Brainy.
Okay, yeah.
So that one is not one of my favorites. And frankly, just going back by this list, and Frank Miller's all the way back in 6. I mean, some of these I haven't even heard.
Yeah.
But I will make a note that Darkseid is one of my favorite villains in DC.
Yeah.
He really presents a threat, and especially to Superman, someone like him. Every time he comes in, something's about to happen and presents a really big threat.
Yeah.
So anytime I get to see Darkseid is good. Of course, my favorite depiction of the character is the Michael Ironside Superman animated series.
And I was just
version
about that. Yeah.
Yes. Especially that first scene where Mannheim is going into Apocalypse and he's following the Herald, and you see just Darkseid imposing there, looking over a fire pit, and you hear Michael Ironside's voice there, but it's a little bit distorted. And I actually like that better. Later on, they just left it Michael Ironside.
Yeah.
But when it's still that distorted, reverberating voice.
Welcome to Apocalypse, Mr. Mannheim. You may call me Darkseid.
Really imposing and really intimidating. And he's one of those characters, if written well, he doesn't need to do anything to show how powerful he is.
No.
He simply, it's the reaction of the people around him. There's that one scene where he's resurrected in the Justice League. And it's a civil war and Apocalypse. Both sides, Granny Goodness and Baron Wonderbar.
Yeah.
And they're about ready to fight, and all of a sudden, boom, comes Darkseid, and everyone bows and stops.
Arise, my children. Let this meaningless battle for control end today. But let the universe howl in despair, for I have returned.
It's like okay, we're done. Daddy's home.
Yes, exactly. And that's the episode I was thinking of too. And the moment where I guess I could just say where Superman opens up. That's the moment from that show. That's one of the moments from that show where it's like, where Superman is talking about, this is an opportunity, a rare opportunity to show you just how powerful I really am.
So Yeah, definitely. Great villain. Great
Yes. Okay, number 2. All right. Crisis on Infinite Earths.
villain.
Oh,
We're
yes.
doing that a lot.
And I have read that one. I've read it a couple times actually. I'm not going to go into every sort of what detail about that, but you talked about a game changer.
Yeah.
That was a big one.
Give us your 2 cents, sir.
Oh, okay. So that really changed what I didn't I had no idea that there could be a multiverse. Okay. Yeah, I had read Flash comics. Okay. But really I didn't know that there could be well a multiverse and parallel or alternate Earths and all of that. And how this story, took that idea, and yeah, of course ran with it, but made it so emotional, and made it so powerful and so moving. Some of the losses that happen in there, specifically, and I just ought to jump to right away, Flash. The thing is, he had disappeared, and so I had read some of the issues. Like, okay, I started reading Wally West, okay, as the Flash, and then I read Crisis on Infinite Earths, and then I went back, and it's like, well, what happened to the Flash before Crisis on Infinite Earths? And it was actually he was on trial for killing Professor Zoom, the Reverse Flash. And then he and his wife, because Professor Zoom had killed Iris, and so Barry killed him. And so Flash, the authority said, Flash, you can't do that. You're on trial. And so he basically just kind of was whisked away to the future.
Okay.
With Iris, like Iris shows up and takes him, and it's explained she's still alive and whatnot. And so, yeah, from there, he sees that kind of white wall, that antimatter, like white wall, and then he's snatched. He's taken.
Okay.
And then later in Crisis on Infinite Earths, we find he's being tortured by the Psychopirate. Emotionally tortured, because that's what the Psychopirate can do. He can manipulate people's emotions and all of that. And so, as far as I know, the Anti-Monitor removed him because he can warn so many people, and also he can like travel through time, and he can, so he's really, really powerful. And there are other reasons too, as far as I know. I'm skipping a whole bunch because it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
But yeah, he realizes he's freed. He gets free. And there's that large, gosh, what is it, antimatter engine or something like that. And he realizes that, if I run around it fast enough, if I surround it with matter, because it's antimatter, if there's enough of me just all around it all at once, that I can destroy it. And then he appears to other heroes and he's like, please help me, please. He's like shouting at them, and they're like, Flash, what are you? And he's on his run, ending his life, but he's visiting them in moments. So that keeps like this kind of ghost of him shows up. This phantom of him shows up and warns people, like, oh, I'm you like, help me. He just shouts, help me. And I think in another issue or something like that, he says, you must do this or you must do that. But it was just so moving. And Supergirl dying, and then there's Superboy Prime, and so many worlds being, it's a devastating story, and it really needed to happen too, just in terms of like cleaning house.
Yeah. And that's an example of, we're getting to the point now in comics where we're constantly getting retcons, soft and hard, and just trying to, as you said, clean house with all these, different universes, different stories, different characters. And I get it from a company, outside the story standpoint. It's like you want to keep it all clean. Here is an example of how to do that and do it right, and making a story out of this need to clean house, as we say.
Yeah.
So it happens, you get big and things grow, and you start wanting to, hey, let's make it simple. Let's make it clean. Let's bring all these characters in. So if that were to happen to any one of you who are writing or will be writers, here's an example of, okay, we can do it this way. Here's how we do this in regards to retconning.
Yeah.
Whereas, in the past, it hasn't been done right, or the immediate past, I guess I should say.
Sure. I'm thinking of like Zero Hour. You were talking about Hal Jordan, becoming Parallax and whatnot. I thought Zero Hour was not bad. I read some of it, but it was still kind of like. And did you read that? Did you read Zero Hour?
I do remember reading it, but it has been a while. I think that was back when I was wanting to learn more about what happened to Hal Jordan and the whole complex story about how he went crazy, how Parallax took hold of him, what he was doing during Parallax, his Parallax saga, how he became the Spectre, and it does kind of get kind of confusing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not the best stories during those periods. But I guess what I'm trying to say is this particular crisis, the first crisis, was an example of how to make a good story out of a situation. It's like, we need to do this. And hey, look, there might be something here that we can, make out of it. So making the best out of a situation. I'm not going to say it was a bad situation, but a complex situation, definitely.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they were cleaning up, or they were taking care of, sort of what could have been problematic elements of some of their titles or something like that, like Superman being alive from 1938, right, to the 80s. How do you explain that? But they just infused it, right? It just offers the reader like so much. I mean, it's just full of so much loss. It's not a story. They didn't just write it to fix things. They wrote this really emotional story, this really, cataclysmic, catastrophic sort of story.
Yeah, and they cared about the characters. I mean, it wasn't just it wasn't a gimmick, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah. Number one
On this list is Kingdom Come.
Kingdom Come.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
By Mark Waid and Alex Ross.
Again, Mark Waid.
Yep.
Alex Ross. I'm not sure about that one.
Let's see. And I was waiting for that. Like, I don't know if that one really. Yeah. I'm not gonna just really dispute this sort of list, because it's probably based more on perhaps what people, I don't know, enjoyed about a certain story. What more subjective, right?
Yeah.
More subjective enjoyment instead of like objective. Well, this is great for the DC universe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had read that, and there are great moments in it. And overall, yeah, it's a great story. And some of those moments have been snatched, and kind of reinterpreted in media, kind of like what Crisis on Infinite Earths, the CW crossover event.
Yeah. So I was going to mention that one.
Yeah, that's in there. Or like moments in there. I think a sort of a moment from there was in Justice League Unlimited, where Superman and Captain Marvel or Shazam were fighting each other.
Yeah.
And so that was something that did take place in Kingdom Come. And yeah, I read that one, and I read Earth X. I don't know. Have you read that one?
Yeah, Earth X. Yeah, that's the Marvel one.
Yeah, I read that. I read Kingdom Come and Earth X at the same time, because I don't know if like Alex Ross was just really becoming really, really popular or something like that. But I got more out of Earth X than I did out of Kingdom Come. Like Kingdom Come is fun. It's got some fun moments and some funny moments and some sad moments, or at least moments that are supposed to be sad, but I just thought there was more to Earth X, and was that Alex Ross, and was that Mark Waid too?
I don't know. I do know, I have it here, that Marvel's wasn't done by Mark Waid. It was done by Kurt Busiek.
Oh, okay. Or Kurt Busiek, right?
Busiek. Excuse me. Yes. But no, Earth X was done by Jim Kruger and Alex Ross.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, and not to just be like, oh, why did Mark Waid do really well here and not well there? It's like, yeah, the story's really fun, and it's an Elseworld story. It's basically a what if, right?
Yeah.
And so that's probably also, it's not to say it's not considered canon, but it's just kind of like, it didn't really hold me that much. And I do, I'm supposed to be kind of like, oh, what a bummer that number one is one that really, didn't wow me as much as, perhaps other ones had. Like, as you had said, The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
That one was a big wow. Crisis on Infinite Earths was a big wow. Even The New Frontier. I don't know. I probably would have put The New Frontier
A little
before.
bit higher, yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit higher, because with the story like New Frontier, it calls upon real world elements. Because if I remember correctly, the writer of that one was influenced by the speech that Candy had given, and he even uses it in the animated movie that they did, and does the audio clips from that famous speech, and he used that to inspire him to write The New Frontier as this, as you said, the story of hope.
Yeah.
These new heroes coming up in this time frame, this era, to instill that hope. So when it comes to Kingdom Come, if I remember the story correctly, it was Superman kind of loses hope because people were more, if I remember correctly, wanting them to be more violent and authoritative. So it's like, why aren't you killing these villains and these evil people who are doing these bad things, to the point where like a newer generation comes and starts doing that.
Yeah.
And they kind of lose heart, lose faith, and sort of like retire, to the point where like the new generation takes things out of control, and it's just fighting for fighting's sake. Yeah.
So, Kingdom Come, Mark Waid and Alex Ross's tale of the old guard of DC heroes facing obsolescence in a world protected by younger and more vicious generation of superheroes, or a more vicious generation of superheroes, is just as powerful now as it was when it was first published in 1996. So, I do believe the story, it says it's powerful. Yeah, there are moments where characters really display how much power they have. But it's really the art, as far as I know.
It just seems to me like, remembering that story, it just really didn't hit the points that needed to hit. Not to say it's a bad story, but it just didn't clear the bar for me. So
yep. So there you go. There was that list.
But, now, did you have any personal ones? Because I know there has to be a Swamp Thing one that you're.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, now we're being like subjective.
Now we're going to John's list here. John's personal favorites.
Sure.
Let's get to that.
Yeah, I'll speed through them so we can get to yours. And so the ones that really affected me, or really did really convince me that I'm supposed to like read so many comics and know so much about comics and produce comics.
Inspire you.
Okay. Yeah. And so that was Swamp Thing, definitely. Alan Moore's run on Swamp Thing. I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is literature. I'm reading literature and not just something, that is
not just the funny pages.
Yeah, funny pages, or something for kids, or something that was inconsequential.
Yeah.
As some people can see comic books being.
I mean, even nowadays, people are still, seeing comics and in retrospect, comic book movies as, inconsequential for kids. I'm thinking of like the Scorsese quote, about comic books. It's not real cinema. So that's still even a stigma that comic books and these movies are still having to fight against.
Yeah.
But even going back into like the 60s and sometimes even the early 70s, in that era, the idea that comic books were for kids, well, I think even prior to that, or even going so far as not just for kids, it's detrimental to kids, and sort of that mindset.
Yeah.
There was this one sort of like it was like a B version movie of the McCarthy trials.
Oh, okay.
There's this one psychologist, and I can't remember his name, but he basically got on his soapbox and explained how comics are detrimental to the developing youth.
Yeah.
So we're still dealing with that stigma, and it was comic books and writers like Swamp Thing, like Moore coming out. Neil Gaiman's Sandman series also reminds me that comics are not just for kids and not only for kids.
Oh yes. And then moving on from there, like I could mention Sandman. Like I did read that, but it didn't have the same sort of impact or same effect. Animal Man, we had talked about that. Like, yeah, that was pretty swell, but it was something that Alan Moore had already done in Swamp Thing. Not totally. And in case people get up in arms, like, oh, Animal Man was like, he didn't do exactly the same thing, but it changed that character fundamentally, very, very much. And so probably Jeff Johns' run on The Flash.
Yeah,
that was one that really, gosh, reading that, I was like, whoa, like this can be done, with this character, and the artwork too. I'm not certain if that got me back into The Flash or got me back into reading The Flash, but it was just like I saw it and I was like, wow, like that just looks great. And then I read the story, or at least I did believe it looked great anyway. And then I read the story, and it was just so basically where he introduces Hunter Zolomon as Professor Zoom or Zoom.
Yeah.
Like reading that's what I mean, that was a great story, and it brought something new and fresh. And then The Walking Dead for me.
Okay, yeah.
I read, I don't know if that's totally DC. I do apologize, but it's like seminal stories. Like it was around the same time, and no, that's something different. But still, it's like at the same time, like what that could do. Actually, oh gosh, so that's what got me out of reading like DC and Marvel. I started reading The Walking Dead. And so it kind of broke that sort of habit of like, whoa, there are great stories that are being told, not knowing that, it wasn't like DC or Marvel. And I read it and I was like, oh gosh, I don't have to just be reading DC, and I don't have to just be reading, I suppose mainstream.
It was sort of the same way with me, like with Hellboy and some of the other independent stuff that we talked about.
Yeah.
And getting into those. That sort of was a gradual thing with me, just getting into like the individual or the offshoots, kind of like bringing back Sandman again.
Sure.
And yeah, these like what ifs and sort of going into these different realities, gradually bringing me into like independent stories. And combine that with it's like I've read enough X-Men, I've read enough DC. There's nothing really speaking to me. Let's find something else.
Sure.
And again, reviews, word of mouth. Everyone's talking about Hellboy. Oh, Hellboy's coming out with a movie. I want to know what's behind this story. And sort of that inquisitive nature of myself to find stories elsewhere kind of came with me.
So yeah, that kind of got us off the DC. I just said it because it was just, it's like, and then realizing, oh wait, we're supposed to be talking about DC Comics, but it's like, yeah, that was the one that really broke, I'd said habit or something like that, but it just really, it opened up the world for me, reading the Walking Dead. So now I read indie comics, but let's get to your list.
Okay. But yeah, getting into my list, I'm more of I don't want to say traditional, but more of the newer stuff.
Sure.
That have happened recently, because I've kind of come into it late to the game. I was always a Marvel guy. Just the characters over there kind of spoke to me. And it wasn't until I started that process of, exploring other avenues out there and seeing other stories. So we talked about the Green Lanterns and the Sinestro War being on the top of that list. We've already talked about that, so I won't spend much more time on that other than to say it's awesome. But going into the ramifications of things like the Green Lantern Rebirth and the Sinestro War Corps, and answering that question: what are the other colors? What do they do?
Yeah.
So Jeff Johns is, in regards to this story, a genius by answering that question: what are the other colors? And just taking a simple concept and opening the floodgates with what can be done. And it shows how, he loves the characters and really knows his history.
Okay.
Being a fan of Green Lantern. I think he was like Green Lantern and the Flash are his go-to, his favorites. So we have, of course, the Sinestro Corps, the Blue Lanterns, explore them and realize that these guys are hope. And it came up with an interesting concept that I'm 100% backing. The whole idea of hope and will working together. Without will to back it up, hope is useless.
Mm-hmm.
And in regards that once a green or a Blue Lantern is away from a Green Lantern, they can just fly around in space and that's it. So that concept of hope and will working in unison is really a concept that stuck with me, and I'm totally behind that. Going into the Red Lanterns, we start learning more about what happened during the Manhunter's reign.
Yeah.
Having mentioned previously that one planet in Yzmolt in Sector 666 was destroyed by the Manhunters, and it was the Guardian's great shame. And you get this character who is sort of justified in his rage because he never got the justice and was imprisoned because of it.
Yeah.
To keep that secret. So he becomes the embodiment of this rage. Then you have someone like LaFreeze of the Avarice, the Orange Greed, where he's the only lantern, and because of it, he's so powerful. But he's constantly in need of everything. The Orange Lantern hypes up his greed and this need to consume and have everything. And then you have the Violet Corps, or the Star Sapphires, which draws on this long history in Green Lantern and dealing with love, and not just love in the romantic sense, in the mature sense, but also in a immature sense of possession or ownership. It gets into the darker sides of love. And then you have the Compassion, the Indigo Tribe, the most enigmatic, mysterious of all the Corps. And it's linked to some sort of mystery history with
Not to say, is it Abensur?
Yeah, Abensur. And it has some sort of hidden history. Even their oath hints at Sur and their declaration, whatever they charge up. And that one's an interesting one because they can actually use, due to embodying compassion, can use the powers of the other lanterns.
Oh.
So, I mean, it definitely delves into a lot of character growth. He's asking himself these questions, and one of the most important question is why. So I think that's what makes it so interesting, because he explores. He's asking these questions and coming up with his own answers. So if that's the kind of storytelling you like, I highly recommend it.
Okay.
The next one, Scott Snyder. He's done some independent stuff with his own titles. American Vampire comes to mind. He did another one called Witches that I have yet to read. It's on my queue. But he did this stint on Batman, the Court of Owls. And he really gives this scary sort of haunted feel to his stories. And especially in the artwork with Greg Capullo. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Dealing with these urban myths. And this particular story, the Court of Owls, it's a myth, it's a legend. There's even a little rhyme that goes to it about the history of Gotham. this sort of cult group gain his attention or their attention and saying we're in control of Gotham. Another one he did with, and it's more of a Justice League story that's Batman heavy influence, called Dark Knight Metal, and starts delving into sort of like the more supernatural, extra dimensional version of the Batman, where you start learning about this dark universe. This is where all the bad universes and bad realities go.
Yeah.
Where they inhabit the good ones. It ends up leaning into this whole hidden history of the universe. What's behind the source wall? Who are the creators of this universe? What is this demon, Barbados, and what he represents? And it goes into answering all these different questions and exploring new territories. Because I remember for the longest time, the idea of the source wall, which is basically this ever expanding infinite wall at the edge of the universe, and you don't know what's behind it. So he starts delving into asking those questions, and you end up learning, what is that hand that bursts the universe? If anyone in DC knows about the history, it started with a hand opening up, and the universe was made. And
there's a Green Lantern, right? Is it myth or something like that about the beginning of the universe that you can't, or it's a warning, isn't it? It's a warning.
Yeah.
And no one can see the beginning of the universe. It's
a law. You can't see before the creation of the universe. And he delves into that. But it's really interesting to see where he takes it. So that's one of my influences, or one of my recommendations. Of course, you have others that have come before him. I'm thinking of Batman No Man's Land, which is a big influence for The Dark Knight Rises, where Gotham suffers a great earthquake, and the story gets split up between the villains, and everyone who's left between the cops and Batman himself have to slowly but surely fight back in order to reclaim Gotham. We have the Jeff Loeb series of Hush, introducing new characters as well as some familiar ones, and delving more into Batman's history with a childhood friend who is Elliot. What was his? Thomas Elliot.
Yeah, I was about to say as far as I recall, it's Thomas Elliot.
Yeah, and dealing with this smart character who's manipulating not only the villains but Batman himself. This is one of the things I like about these kind of characters, is like they use their mind, their intelligence, their manipulation in order to best someone who's stronger, faster, better than them. So those are always the ones I like and gravitate towards, and why I see characters like the Riddler kind of being misused as like a joke almost.
Yeah, sort of like the 60s television series. I was just thinking about that the other day. And if I can bring it up with the stories that we're telling, but it's like the Riddler on that show is pretty much just like the Joker.
Yeah. It was sort of like a rehashed Joker.
Yeah, he was just laughing all the time. And
even down to, I was going to say, even down to the laugh.
Yeah.
So it just playing the character off as a threat without having to, make him this formidable force.
Yeah.
It's those kind of characters that can get what they want without really doing much. They always seem more of a threat to me. It's a concept, when done right, you get characters like Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, or even going into like the Arkham series, the video games, where Scarecrow in the last one, Arkham Knight, holds the city hostage, ransom, and just using his intelligence and the entire concept of fear to play Batman. Those are always more interesting stories to me, other than someone who is just simply strong and throwing a punch. One of the things we like about Bane, or at least I like about Bane, is that he's not only a strong, formidable force, but he's also intelligent, which is why I like that depiction in The Dark Knight Rises. You know, he breaks the bat, but he also demoralizes them too.
Well, yes, he breaks him in every sense of the word.
Yes, not only body but spirit, and he even hints at that as well. So that's a good story if you're interested in one. Of course, we have another Jeff Loeb one of Batman: The Long Halloween.
Oh yeah.
When you want to talk about influences.
Oh my gosh, why wasn't that on the list? You know, that I had found. I mean, that one. Yeah, do talk about it.
Yeah, this is essentially like the origin story of Two-Face. And going back to what was done in Hush, bringing all these characters in, it's sort of like a who's who rogues gallery of Batman. And of course, getting into the origin of Harvey Dent and becoming Two-Face. Very influential piece of work. I mean, let's name off the different influences. I mean, you have The Dark Knight, definitely, and the corruption of Harvey Dent. You have, I think they're doing like a new series or new animated series based off of the Long Halloween.
Yeah, I saw some clips of, that.
And then even what was it? The new movie, The Batman with Patterson.
Pattinson?
What's that?
Wait, Pattinson?
Pattinson.
Right? Because I've just been seeing people going Battinson.
But no, I think that one, if I remember correctly, at least early on, The Long Halloween was definitely going to be an influence to that story as well.
Oh, okay.
I think they might have changed it a little bit because it seems to be more Riddler-esque type influence, but they are bringing some characters like the Penguin and Catwoman in there too. So
it'd be great if it could lead into something like that. If it was like a trilogy or something, that it was that story, The Long Halloween, but like as one film and then another film. And then by the third one, you realize, oh my gosh, this is The Long Halloween. They're telling that story.
That would be cool. So that's also another one of my favorites. And then getting back to Flash, coming full circle. One of my favorites being Flashpoint. And I'm surprised that one's not on your list either.
Oh, yes, on that list. And that was gamesradar.com or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why I started there. Because it's like, I looked at it and it's like, some of this, here I am, I brought up Walking Dead for a DC Comics conversation, but still it's like some of what I know are like pivotal stories, necessary stories, enormous stories, weren't on that list. So that's why I just went with it.
Yeah. Flashpoint, Jeff Johns again, asking that simple question, what if? This is one of the great things about Jeff Johns in this particular writing. You learn something is wrong from the very get-go, but you don't learn about it until later, which compels the reader to keep on reading. Sure, it's like, what's going on? What happened? What caused this? Why is Barry the only one who knows what's going on? So to set it all up, it's basically a what if, but with the real world Barry Allen waking up in this almost dystopian reality, where Atlantis and Themyscira are at war with each other. His mother is alive, and surprise, surprise, he doesn't have his super speed anymore. He's no longer connected to this speed force. And he goes reaching out to Batman and comes to find out that Batman isn't Batman.
Well, there is a Batman.
There is a Batman, yes.
Yeah.
But it's not the Batman we know and love. It's Thomas Wayne. And he has no compunction whatsoever about killing his enemies. In fact, he has a couple of gadgets, but his main weapons are guns. So, yeah, you realize really early on that this is not the world that we know about. And that's what makes it interesting. Even going into Batman's history and learning what happened there. So I always like those what if questions, those what if stories, because it allows for things that happen that don't usually happen and see what if. Another example of this that's always been really a really fun story to read, The Age of Apocalypse
Hmm.
in the Marvel side of things. So yeah, Flashpoint, and I think that's actually the in combination with you and your love for Flash got me into start reading the Flash as an interesting character and to see what he can do and what he and delving into his villains, his whole process, and way he uses his powers, and way he develops as a person and the character that he is.
Hmm. Besides that, like being a what if story, right? Flashpoint, it's not an Elseworlds story,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I had mentioned that, or we'd been talking about that. Like Elseworlds for DC is kind of their what if, like Marvel's what if.
Yeah,
No, it's not an Elseworlds story. Like it's considered, right? It's considered canon. It's considered part of the Flash's story.
yeah, yeah. It has ramifications throughout and in changes things. And when you have a story that changes things, changes the characters, it's always a compelling story to me.
Hmm. And that's something that DC wasn't doing. I mean, for a long time, and we had talked about that. I mean, we talked about that just a little bit ago. Well, it's now been about what, like 2 hours, but it's something they have that reset, or it comes full circle, or everything gets taken care of, and it's like, oh, or what, the villain gets defeated, the bad guy's been, I don't know, captured or something like that, and then it's like, okay, now, well, we go back to everyday life, and
Yeah, it's like no matter how bad things got, they
Yeah.
would always come back around to the equilibrium,
yes,
to the norm, and stuff like that. And you don't have like a growth or change. And it makes me even going back to the more experimental stories that I haven't read yet, but do know about, like the Battle of the Cow, where Batman was supposedly dead after one of these, I think it was Infinite Crisis,
sure,
where he was presumed dead, and who's going to take up the mantle of Batman. And for a while there, it was Dick Grayson. They made Dick Grayson Batman. So again, example of them trying new things and getting out of that mold of returning back to equilibrium.
hmm
So it's just one of the many examples of how they were trying to do that. And yeah, sometimes they didn't really work, like with New 52.
hmm
But it did result in some good storytelling within it, and it has led into new avenues they haven't been able to explore before.
hmm
So as long as we get some new stories, yeah, I don't mind going through some bad ones in order to get there.
Yeah. Or, resetting once again at the end of
Yeah.
the day or something. And because that can be reassuring. And that's probably what DC does. And I guess we're heading towards the conclusion, right? Or we're heading towards our end here. But what's great about DC, what some people may say is like, yeah, they're too black and white. They're not as gray as Marvel, or, nothing really, what had happened doesn't last, or no changes have been made, no growth has taken place. Sometimes that's really reassuring, just to know that your character, perhaps your favorite character or a character you identify with, is going to be okay, or is still going to be the same, the next time you come back to, or I guess the next issue.
Yeah, or just knowing that, these heroes, these individuals that you look up to have gone through this crucible,
Mhm.
this torment, and have come out the other side stronger. Can be also reassuring. So it's not to say that when we nitpick at DC and the cycling of DC back to the norms, where it is a critique story wise, but there's also something there to applaud, that all of these characters who go through these things come out the other side a little beaten, a little scarred, but they're still there. It is something inspirational, something that we could all take to heart. The world is going to hurt us. It's just one of those, at this point, one of those absolutes. I'd like to think that maybe it won't, Now, life is unfair. It doesn't mean that we have to be. But for right now, yes, we're going to get bruised, we're going to get broken, we're going to get our scars, but we can get through it. So to have that reassuring element out there that we can draw inspiration from is a good thing. On that note, I think we like to say thank you again for joining us. Thank you, John.
Oh, yes. Thank you for allowing me to, I don't know about hijack, but steer this episode towards kind of DC for a little while, Okay, I was just looking up how many times has Superman died.
Oh.
And it looks like CBR.com, and that's what, like, comic book resources, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
a comic book resource. Looks at 15 times DC killed one of their most strongest and popular heroes. So it looks like, 15 times Superman has died. And so, yes, that's a testament to DC. That's like, people, they kill Superman, but people say we need Superman,
Yeah.
we want Superman, and he comes back.
That avatar of hope and the goodness of what we can become. Truth, justice, the American way.
Ah!
Ah!
Yes, and then just shouting or screaming.
Ah! So yes, on that note, we'll say thank you, John. Thank you, readers. We will come back again with a new episode. I think we're going to start delving into Marvel.
Yes.
We're going to come into my house now, bud. Yeah.
Oh no.
Starting with I think we're going to do the Marvel series first, and then delve into the Marvel storylines that we like. So yes, tune again. Same bat time, same bat channel. All right. So thank you again. This has been Comic Space Podcast.